What's up, Wildlings? Before we get started, let me tell you about the brand new sponsorship deal that I just inked with Audible. You guys know Audible. It's an Amazon company. We all use Amazon. And if you're a Sean vs. Wild listener, Audible is going to hook you up, bro. I'm talking 30 free days of the Audible service so you can test it out, see what you think about it, and they're also going to give you a credit for a free audio book. And if you're like me and you love to read, but you're also really busy, audiobook's great, man. At the gym, on the go, in your van, when you're driving from town to town and you don't have time to crack open a book, Audible is what is up, guys. And also, when you sign up for Audible, you're helping out the Sean vs. Wild podcast. They're going to give me some kickbacks here. Pretty simple. If you want to support the show and get a free audiobook and get a free month of Audible, all you have to do is go to your desktop or laptop. Don't do this on a mobile right now. Desktop or laptop only. Go to www.audibletrial.com/Sean vs. Wild. audibletrial.com/Sean vs. Wild. Go ahead and click get your free 30 days, sign in with your Amazon account, pick out the book that you want, and when you do, they're going to give a kickback to me to help me keep the lights on here at the Smithsonian. Again, audibletrial.com/Sean vs. Wild, audibletrial.com/Sean vs. Wild. Get your free 30 days and get your free audiobook right now. What's up, Wildlings? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Sean vs. Wild podcast. I'm your host, as always, the man, the myth, the Sean Thriller Smith, the guy putting rad back into talk radio, and it's time to rock and roll all night and podcast every Tuesday. It's September 12th, guys, and on the show today, I have Jen Appel from Catalyst Publicity Group on the show today. I wanted to do one that was less band-related for a while. It's been a while since we had a non-band-related episode, and this one is going to be a sneak peek inside the music business. Jen sat down and chatted with me for over an hour while she's actually hurricane prepping. She's down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so I wish her the best, and hopefully you had a safe time getting through this hurricane and you continue to have a safe time getting through this hurricane. But she sat down to chat with me about Catalyst Publicity Group. They're celebrating their 6th year in business. We were one of her very first clients, so we catch up a little bit, but the beauty about this episode is it's a nice sneak peek into the world of music business, and she will walk you through it. If you have any interest, if you're in a band, if you're interested in getting into the music business, she's going to walk you through, give you some great advice, some things to do, some things not to do, and then especially when it comes to getting a publicist, how to go about doing that the right way, and what to expect from a publicist, what not to expect, all that good sort of thing. A lot of great information, a lot of great advice on this episode, and I was so thankful to have her on the show. So that's going to be great. So make sure to check that out. Also, make sure to check out my sponsor at audiofileinc.com. I'm talking about Shane. Shane is going to be printing the items that you like on the items that you like, all the designs that you're into, on the brands that you're into, because Shane is a screen printer, screen printing your ideas, and giving you the best price in town, no matter what town you live in. He ships to all 50 states, guys. So what you want to do is go to audiofileinc.com, tell him the Wild Man sent you. That's audiofileinc.com, audiofileinc.com, and tell them Sean vs. Wild sent you. Yeah, and also big thanks to Joe Brock for booping the dials, as he always does. Man works very hard. We've done a lot of podcasts here in just the last few weeks. So, Joe, big thanks to that. And big thanks to everybody that's been tuning in. I've just a real surge of listens and downloads. And I thank you guys so much. And again, if you like what you hear, please tell your friends, like, share, and subscribe on social media. And yeah, I appreciate every single one of you. And thank you so much. Going to be pretty short and sweet for me, guys. I tell you what, last week, and you can hear it in this podcast, I was starting to really, really get sick, and I've been worn down all last week, and then I'm finally feeling fantastic today. So going to keep it short and sweet here, and yeah, let you guys go on your merry way. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Sean vs. Wild podcast. Now, turn your stereos up to 14, rip off the knob, and prepare to get wild. An Appel a day keeps the doctor away.
Yes.
I haven't given you an Appel a day in years, but there was a point in my life when every day or every other day I was making a pun with your name and posting it on Facebook.
It was my favorite.
I would like to think
but that was a good one.
That's either me at my most creative or me at my most bored. I don't know.
Well, I would say creative. They're definitely the best I've ever heard. And my last name is so fun because it's a crapshoot. You either get Appel or Appel. And I just think it's fun to watch people like get concerned if they're not right. And
Mrs.
especially like growing
Appel,
up in class stuff. Yeah, they're like, Miss Appel. I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. Like, that's cool. That would be a cool last name. And then when I correct them, they feel like, you know, oh God, I just like offended her so much. But I think it's fun. And even, it's so funny, my brother and I call him Bapples because his name is Brian, and he calls me Japples. So it's kind of this thing that we've had for a long time. I hope he doesn't kill me for saying that, but
shout out to Bapples right off the bat. Bapples, you're coming in hot on this podcast, bro.
Love it.
And you're in Florida right now, and we were kind of chatting before the tape started rolling. Like I'm using tape or anything, but hypothetical tape started rolling, and we got Irma coming in here in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. It's so funny because I grew up in South Florida, and my whole life they talk about hurricane preparation and how to prepare for it. I feel like I am practically like a meteorologist at this point because I know everything hurricane related. So when they start talking about all these hurricanes, it kind of gets a little, I wouldn't say nerve-wracking because we've been doing this for so long. But this hurricane in particular, I don't know why, but for some reason, the way that it's set up, the waters, the temperature, the direction, it's kind of a panic at this point. I'm very fortunate that I started my preparations over the weekend just by chance. I became an adult this weekend and got a Costco membership and decided to go and get some supplies. And we knew that there was something brewing. And we started getting our water and our food and perishables and flashlights and just getting everything that we needed. So we kind of beat the system a little bit. And then, of course, as it turned, I think it was yesterday or the day before, to a Category 5, actually a more intense category, we ended up going a little crazy because we wanted to make sure we had enough stuff. Because unfortunately what's going to happen is, and what they're predicting is, we're going to lose power. And we don't know how long we're going to lose power, but in the past it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be, a day. We just have no idea. But the way that they're describing it, it's going to be, the worst that we've had in a long time. And unfortunately, I was here during Hurricane Andrew. Fortunately, our house was okay, but, we had a tree fall on our roof and we had minimal damage. But I just remember, I was only 5 years old when it happened, but I just remember my parents and my brother, we were just sitting in this room away from the windows, and it was so scary, and I'll never forget that moment. And this is kind of, now I have more responsibilities. I've got my dog to worry about. I've got my property and my whole family, and we're all going to be scattered around the state. So it's kind of nerve-wracking, but like I was saying before, it's so beautiful outside right now. So I have to enjoy this moment, and when the hurricane comes, then I just have to read a book and wait it out and see what happens.
Whenever I was a kid, I used to be deathly afraid of tornadoes, and where I live, basically, where you're saying growing up in Florida, you prepare for a hurricane, and that hurricanes happen in that general area. Well, where I grew up in southern Indiana, it is tornadoes. We get the tornadoes, we get the snow, the ice, all that sort of thing. But growing up, I was deathly afraid of tornadoes. And then Night of the Twisters and Twister, those movies came out right in the same year. So literally I was just the most frightened kid. And my secret was to always go to sleep. If any inclement weather, I like to go to sleep.
Yeah, tornadoes are, I think that they're worse because they're so unpredictable. And I know, when I went to Indiana, the sirens would go off all the time, and it's you only have seconds to run and hide, and it's so scary. And one year, I remember, I spent a summer in college in Bloomington, and the skies were green, and it was the greenest sky I've ever seen. And I just remember my friend who lives in Ohio was like, we need to go now. We were walking, I guess, to dinner or something, and she was like, no, we need to actually run to shelter. And fortunately, nothing was like in our pathway, but at least I wouldn't say that this is a positive, but I guess maybe it is. But, we've got a couple of days, so if people are still preparing, if they're still looking for gas or water, at least it's still, something that they can get. But I do think it makes our anxiety levels a little higher knowing, things are closing, people are evacuating. Do we leave? Do we go? It's kind of this like split decision on what to do, but, that anticipation, but there's nothing we can do today about it. So we just have to keep moving on.
Well, that's very motivational. Right off the bat, I mean, we're starting off pretty heavy in the podcast, what with the bapples and the hurricane talk and all. And then, but you know what? There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. I like the way you spun that just at the end. We got to keep moving forward. At the end of the day, that's life in general. All the crazy stuff that life throws at us, we got to keep moving forward no matter what. Yeah,
absolutely. I always try to live my life in a positive way. And I mean, I grew up, my parents, there was nothing negative about anything growing up. Everything was, okay, well, we'll get through it. Or if I failed a test, they'd be like, okay, well, you have another class so you can try out again. There was never this, I hate the position I'm in or I'm so negative about something. I just always have, everything in my life has been ups and downs, and you just have to take it as it is and try to smile and, I don't know, pet a dog or like do something to make you happy that's going to get you through your day.
Well, shout out to Mapples and Dapples for doing that for you, raising you upright. And guys, speaking of rocking like a hurricane, check out that segue. This is the Sean vs. Wild podcast, and I'm your host, as always, Sean Thriller Smith. And joining me in this virtual Smithsonian today, by way of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, I'm talking to Jen Appel, CEO of Catalyst Publicity Group. Jen, I appreciate you so much for being on the show. I know you have, like we were talking about, a lot of wild and craziness going on, but you took the time to still chat with me today. And how have you been,
of course,
other than all this crazy hurricane talk?
Good. I'm like trying to remember a time where I felt this good about where I'm at with my career and my life. Everything has just been really nice lately. I've been so fortunate. All the clients that we're working with, the artists that we're working with, are doing some really amazing things lately. And I don't know, I couldn't imagine being in a better place in my life right now, outside of obviously running and operating Catalyst. I also teach as well. So it's really nice. We just started this semester. I teach at Florida Atlantic University in Johnson and Wales, and this semester I took on a couple extra classes, and I get to dive into music, PR, and marketing, and today's music culture. Then I'm teaching a history of media, which is really interesting. And then I also am one of the advisors for the student-run record label on campus at FAU. So it's really exciting. I've got my hands dipped in so many different pockets of opportunities, and it kind of makes, when you're in a position for a while, you need some adversity. You need something to just get your mind moving and activating. And that's sort of what teaching has been for me lately. And I'm very fortunate that I can see a future for this music industry, or just in general for PR and marketing, and helping students go from thinking maybe they want to go into the music business to understanding how to get into the business and actually being able to apply it. So I think that's really, one of my main focuses. You and I worked together so long ago, so you know how it is to be an emerging artist and kind of navigating those waters. It's so scary. And so that's really what I feel like it's my position to help and guide, through the process, whether being a client with Catalyst or being a student. It's really about making sure that when you're navigating those waters, that not only do you have a support system to walk you through some of these trivial steps in your career, but that you're also doing things the right way. I feel like a lot of artists, they kind of jump so quickly and forget that there are these minuscule things of, having the right photos or having the right bio or having the right social media plan that you jump and you're running too fast, you sort of miss out on these small things that you have to go back and just redo again. So that's sort of what our take is, or always has been with Catalyst, is taking it a little bit slower, making sure that you have the things needed to set up the right plan and campaign. So it's sort of, I think my 2017 goal is to really make sure that we're not running through things too quickly, that we're taking a little bit of a step back, pausing a bit, and making sure that we're doing things the right way, and that our clients can see the success of, the level of, that they're at least in their career.
Well, and just to give the listeners some backstory here, Jen and myself and Baby, yeah, we did work together. Catalyst was our publicity group back in the day, so she's responsible for most of our social media attention. I'd like to just give you all the credit. So Jen's responsible for all of our social media attention back in the day. But I wanted to have you on the show because I feel it's important, because a lot of my listeners out there are in bands, or they are interested in the music scene, or they, they have some sort of affiliation with the music scene, because so much of my my material is related to that kind of up and coming artist type vibe. But I wanted to have you on the show to kind of show everyone a different side of the music business, the other side, the actual business side of, other than just getting out there, getting in the van and grinding. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because as a musician, obviously you have aspirations, you have goals, you have things that you need to obtain, not only for your personal self, but for your career. And, of course, the number one thing is that if you're going to put all this energy and effort, you want the return of investment. That's really, no matter if it's, playing in front of 100 people to playing in front of 10,000 people to making your money back after buying a van to getting that one press hit that was like your hopes and dreams. So it's very difficult for an artist to really see the success if you're constantly feeling like a failure as you're going. So I think going back to what I was saying before, is staying positive as you're going through, these steps in your life. That's the number one and most important thing. I also feel if you surround yourself with good people, and if you surround yourself with people that are going to work hard, it doesn't matter if, you don't have a penny to pay somebody. There are people out there that could be your friends that can help you through the first steps of building your band, or maybe they become your band members, or maybe you're past that and now you are generating revenue and you want to hire the right team. The most important advice I could possibly give is to make sure to do your research. So we get this a lot, where we get artists that are sort of at the crossroads where they know what they want and they know what they need, but they don't know how to get there. And the first thing I would say is do a quick Google search, read a couple of publications. There are a lot of sites, especially like Sonic Biz, Reverb Nation, Holix is another great. They're more of a watermark, to prevent leaking, but they also have a blog section that is really great. There's a lot of music industry news publications that you can just have an idea of what's going on in the business and what's going on in the industry. But if you feel like when you're going through and say you've recorded your first record or your first EP or first song, or you've developed your first music video, the first thing that you're going to want to do is put things on hold. You never want to finish an album. I mean, that's like the first chapter. You write the album, you finish the album, everything is completed, but don't just rush into releasing it until you know that you've had a plan.
Right.
So not everybody needs like a record label, manager, booking agent, publicist. Not everyone needs these, tools or these like additional members to the team. But if you feel like, I get artists sometimes that say, I'm only a musician, I don't know how to get into the business. That's when you have to do some of the research to know, okay, if that's something you do not want to, add to your plate, or say you're just too consumed with other things and you want to outsource it, do the research before you hire.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is when you hire a publicist, for example, and you have all these hopes and dreams and you have all this stuff, but it's not communicated properly, then there's a miscommunication because the publicist says, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is our plan. And the band is, the artist is saying, well, we wanted this instead. So if you do your research and if you're an emerging artist, there's a certain level of PR that you're going to get. And that's okay. But there's a lot of other things that'll happen along the way with that setup, like having you become ready to be presented to press. And that takes time. So as an artist, the best advice is to do some research before. Now, if there are any industry people listening, or publicists in general, it's also our job to educate. So if we're not educating emerging artists or artists in general that need these tools to let them know ethically what is okay to move forward with and what is not. I would never take an artist that I didn't believe in or I didn't feel like I could help them in any way.
Right.
Ethically, if I did take them on and took their money and did nothing, then I'm at fault for that. So I think there's a clear distinction when it comes to an artist needing a team member and that team member understanding what their role is. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen in the industry. We've all heard, horror stories of people entering the business and not doing the right thing or just, not having the right tools or education to be in that position. And I really believe that, it's our job to make sure that if we are going to be in this business, that we have to do things the right way. So that's really the best advice I can give for emerging artists. Obviously, there's a whole campaign set up that you would need to really jumpstart and get everything that you need to completed. But I would say just be careful. And as much as when I jump on the phone with an emerging artist, I question them on what they're doing, I want to be questioned back. I want them to ask me questions of, okay, well, how? Do you go about this? And,
right.
And what is your plan? And what do you do? That's our job to answer those questions. And we have to, if we want a perfect partnership and we want to develop the right relationship, we have to give as much as we get. So,
absolutely.
And a long answer.
Well,
that's it.
let me ask you here. We'll just do a little a role playing here and say that I don't know anything about publicity, or we'll just role play that I'm a level 8 orc warrior, like we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. But no, okay. Say that I don't know anything about this, and this is good for our listener too. Just in to get down to the brass tacks, let me just ask a few questions here, and if you can just provide me the most kind of basic thing, because I feel like the idea of publicist might be confusing as to what it is, what it isn't. You know what I'm saying? And I know we've had conversations before where you might say. You might have told me certain people that I talk to are under the impression that your publicist does this, but it actually does this. So I guess let me ask you in the most basic terms, what is it that a publicist or a publicity group would do for a band?
Yeah, so a publicist, when you break down the word, it's to publicize something. So a publicist can pretty much work in any industry. It doesn't matter what it is, but in this particular conversation, we'll say the music business. So a publicist would be an extra hand to the band. Now, publicists can work within a smaller group, meaning that they can work with a manager, they can work with a label, maybe sometimes a booking agency, but they typically will work with other industry members to accomplish the same goal. So that goal could be pushing an album, it could be, working on a tour, it could be a single, it could be a development campaign, but ideally everyone has their own particular role. And in this case, a publicist would be the role of getting the material, so whether that's a single, a music video, an album, an EP, a tour, a remix, whatever it might be, whatever the piece of content is, to the media. And the media can be broken down to online websites. It could be newspapers, magazines, TV, radio. So there's a lot that sort of encompasses with what the media is, but it's our job to be the liaison between the artist and their content or its content to whatever the medium, whatever the media source is. So it's our job to play both sides pretty much. So we're playing the role of getting and ensuring that the artist is ready to be pitched to the media. And it's our job to also then have the right relationships with media personnel in order to garner the right coverage. So we sort of are playing this middleman between everything. And when you think of like that line of communication of helping the artist and then relaying to the media, you would think that that pathway is super easy. But there's so many things that can complicate things, whether it's the artist not understanding press and what they're looking for, or not providing the right content or the right material that could garner the right attention for press. So it's really important for us on the very, very first step is obviously, you know, once we've had the conversation, the contract signed, everybody's ready to move forward. It's our job to not only before the contract signed, but to make sure that the content is up to par and ready to go. And now I'm not, you know, I didn't go to school for like audio engineering or, you know, production or anything to that value. So anything that comes in music-wise, I have to understand and feel like that story or that style of music or the intensity. It's more of an emotional feeling to the music. And then lyrically, if it makes sense and I can understand it. So anything on like the production side, that's really where you get a manager that comes in, or you get a label, or you have to go to the right producers to make sure that it is set up appropriately. And we've had some tracks that we just knew right off the bat that they weren't ready to go. But let's say your tracks are ready to go, everything is mixed and mastered, ready to just shoot it off to whatever distribution. It's then our job to make sure that there's a plan in action, so that there's a timeline. When are we announcing the album? When is the single coming out? Is the music video good enough to get a premiere? Is there cross-promotional value between that piece of content and whatever the piece of media that we're going to go after? So it's really our job to make sure that cohesively the branding, the imaging, and everything is set up appropriately, so that when we go to a publication of whatever caliber, all the way from zero to the highest of possible publications, that we're actually presenting something that is worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So it's a little complicated because that seems like a pretty easy, you know, communication flow system, but in reality, it's never that perfect. There's production delays, there are photographer delays, there's video director delays. Maybe they get a manager before they come to us, and the manager has a different viewpoint of where the tracks should be taken. There's a lot of complications along the way, especially when you get into labels and you get into distribution. And let's say maybe you get a booking agent, and that agent signs you in for a tour before we're ready to go and announce. So there's a lot of moving parts when you get all these different team members that come in that can, I wouldn't say complicate things. It's just, it makes the strategy a little bit...
Just more people you need to satisfy in order to push forward. You need to get the green light from more people than just, you know, the artist himself.
Right. And usually what happens is, or what we've been finding lately at least, so, you know, we work with managers, we work with booking agencies, we work with labels, and ideally, from what I've been finding lately, and this could be different for everybody, but I find that a lot of other team members really heavily rely on PR to kind of organize the system. Now, it's kind of complicated because you would think, oh, a manager should manage that process, but, you know, really in reality, you know, we are the gateway to getting the content to the public.
Right.
So it really is up to us to make sure that we have enough time to set things up, that presenting it to the press, there's enough time. And what we've been finding lately is it really does take at least 2 to 3 weeks to lock in a press feature. And the reason being is it's just so cluttered these days. The music industry, there's so many different like technological tools for people to create their music better than before.
Right.
And it's funny because in my classes, so I just started 2 weeks ago, and the very first question I asked was, do you feel like the music industry is a positive or negative today? And it's a really hard question to answer because, you know, back in the 80s, maybe that was like the greatest time period, or decades before that. But are we at an advantage now because there are so many newer ways to create? So it's kind of this, it's an interesting balance to try to figure out the right path and who's going to break through. But
Sure.
I do feel like it is difficult today.
Well,
it's hard to navigate. So
if you look back like 30 years ago, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but like in the 80s,
no, you're good.
That was probably the last heyday, because back then, you could be, and I've kind of mentioned stories like this before, you could just be jamming in your garage and, such and such from such and such record label or such and such management could walk by and say, hey, I could sell that. And then, they kind of give you a look, and then they give you a name, and then they put you out. And, it was kind of like beginning to end. Like you had to have some songs and some talent. Now, because everybody has the ability to make music, I feel like it's much more, you have to already be developed before you ever even get to a point when you're ready to kind of start making those steps. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like you already have to be like, have some, especially for like, if you're going to sign to a record label, you had to have already toured. You had to have already gotten your social media following and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, what I say to my artists, it's not about, okay, so we ask them for a list of, maybe 5 to 10 goals. And, some of them, they're really obtainable. Some of them are, I just want to get my music out there in the right way. Okay, well, to some people, getting onto a publication that, is going to champion them, that's a huge win for them. While others might say, the only thing I want is a major publication like Rolling Stone or bigger. Some of them, I feel like when you're an artist, you can reach for the stars, and I absolutely think that is something that you have to do. But, of course, within reason. There shouldn't be a moment where you're blaming team members for not accelerating your career fast enough.
Right.
Because in reality, it's really up to the public and the fans, and, music is subjective, and that's really the most difficult thing to comprehend for an artist, because you pour your heart into something, and what if it's rejected? I mean, that's scary. It's really scary. And then the first thing to pretty much blame throughout the process is not, him or herself. It's really on the team for not doing a good enough job. And I think the one thing that kind of hinders how this industry has flown since the 80s onward is social media. So once the internet was, built and created, and now you've got social media, now it's really, there's just too much clutter out there. Whereas before it used to be a streamlined path of releasing an album. I used to, after middle school and high school, the very first thing every, Tuesday, my mom would take us to, I don't know, FYE or Sam Goody or one of those stores, and we get to pick out whatever records we wanted. And it was such a cool concept to be able to have my mom know and appreciate music like we did, and then be able to go to the store, physically get the record, and then go home and play it, or go home and watch TRL and watch our favorite music videos. And it was just, I felt like it was such an easier time. And I mean, people before me, decades before me, could say that TRL or, going to a physical store that ruined everything. But in my opinion, in today's world, I think social media is ruining things. I think it's definitely opening up different doors.
And I could not, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but I have said it time and time again. Social media has ruined many a thing. I think it's great in many cases, but also in other cases, I feel that it has literally just kind of set us back a few years.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue. My apologies.
Yeah. No. It's so hard because, especially my students who, I mean, I'm not much older than them, maybe by 10 years or so, but I mean, I see them on social media all day long, and it's just, they just want to express and share everything. And sometimes I feel like that mystique of the artist or as like a celebrity, it's sort of gone away because now we have access to everything about them. So as an artist, or at least as an emerging artist, 'cause that's really my focal point. I mean, we've worked with great established artists, and it's been such a unique experience to be able to, help established artists kind of reintegrate back into the social media driven world. But some of these emerging artists that are just entering the music business, it's really scary. There's so many platforms. There's so much to make sure that they're covered on. And then there's that battle of, what time do we post? How do we post? What do we tag? Who do we tag? What link do we post? Do we share something? Do we not share something? Is there a certain brand to it? And all of that has to be talked about before going on to social media, because unfortunately, when you're scrolling through your news feed, I mean, most people will spend 6 to 8 hours a day on social media, which is not a unknown fact. I'm pretty sure that is pretty accurate with everybody. So if you're spending 6 to 8 hours a day, whether it's on any platform, that means that, I mean, on average, I would say most people probably have like anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 friends on Facebook. And that doesn't even equate to how many pages that they've liked on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever. And now you're scrolling through this platform. The likelihood that somebody's going to land on something is so slim to none. And it's unfortunate, because if you pour everything you have into this branding and marketing and promotion, if you're not consistent, and if you're not, you know, I have an artist right now, they have a color scheme that's promoting something in yellow. And it's like, that's perfect, because every time you post something, and if it's yellow, people are going to start attaching themselves to your branding and your imaging. So as an emerging artist, you have to make sure that what you are trying to do, it makes sense along the way. Mm-hmm. So I think that goes back to just making sure that you're prepared as you go through. And social media is definitely a gateway to helping to generate more fans. But I was actually reading an article end of last week. Somebody had posted something, I don't remember if it was like a top 10 list, but something where millennials just don't understand certain things. And one of the big things was, it doesn't matter. You could have 100 billion, whatever, Spotify streams, but if you go and play a show down the street and you can only bring in 10 people, then what does that say about your branding and where you're at? Right. I thought that was like the most true statement, because the unfortunate reality is touring still makes money. And if you can't bring people through the door, then either your live performance isn't up to par, or it's just not something that's going to work out. So I think you have to go back to reverting 30 to 40 years ago to our original, steps of how to make it as a band, or whatever that status of making it is. And it has to go back to
the old
touring and doing things for the fans. Yeah, old-fashioned. I'm such an old-fashioned person that sometimes my team gets so hung up on social media stuff, and then I'm like, but I get it. We have to play today's market. We have to. But if our artist is going on tour and they can't play in front of anybody, then why should we invite press out to cover a show that doesn't have anybody? Right. So we got to go back and revert to the old ways.
Well, those are tried and true methods, and I feel like ultimately, like the social media stuff, the numbers, all that sort of thing, it might be a gauge for your popularity, but it's not the same as how many kids are showing up, how many kids are coming to the show. I just feel you on that. I'm like the exact same way. It's just all about the tried and true method of getting out there, making your fans one at a time. Don't try to streamline this to where, you're just paying these. Like I got into, for example, this thing where when I first started the podcast, I was paying for these Facebook ads. And then I was realizing, I was like, some of these ads got less interaction than these other ones that I didn't pay for. So now I'm just like, I'm not paying for any of these anymore. So, you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know, smoke and mirrors type thing. Like what really matters is your organic following, your organic base.
Right.
Not so much numbers and clicks on a page.
Yeah. Can we talk about the verification? That blue check mark just drives me crazy. It's like a club that
right.
Everybody wants to be a part of, but there's only a certain amount of seats. Like, it drives me crazy. Because, we get artists all the time that ask about it, and I understand that there's certain marketing tools that get opened up if you're part of, verification process. But some of these people that just get so hung up on, trying to have that verified platform. And I understand for some people, it makes sense, especially if there's fake accounts that, need that verification. But sometimes, I don't know. I have a hard time even personally utilizing social media, except for Instagram. I think Instagram's so much fun. Posting a photo, I think it's great. You don't even have to caption it. You can just make it mysterious. And I just think Instagram is so much better than all the other platforms, but that's just my opinion. But I don't know, sometimes when I scroll through, I'm like, I don't need to know this. Or sometimes I feel like it's like a cry for help sometimes when people, utilize a social media platform, when in reality, pick up the phone and call somebody. And that goes back to the same thing as an artist. I know back in the day when I was in my boy band phase and loved all that, it's like being a part of the fan club, having stickers come to my door, or being able to go to a meet and greet because I was a part of something or was a part of that culture. Like, that's where the industry has to go to. That's really the core of your fan base, is making sure that you're giving them something in return for giving you the career that you want. Right. Instead of, I'm going to post a photo and that's going to satisfy you. No, like people want to feel that experience, and they want that. And I think if we're talking music industry today, I truly, truly believe the only genre that's doing it is country. And I feel like country is going to withstand every genre for decades, because they still hold true to that experience and making sure that the fans are taken care of. And, it could be different calibers, but there's something about the country music world that is more about family and collaboration than it is, anything else. And
they're the only people selling out those arenas either. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless you were a band from the 80s and beyond, you can sell out arenas.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you're a new artist, you're the country artists are who's filling all those seats night in and night out.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many tools. If you're an artist that's looking to play shows, get to know your local area. If you're in a city that has no local scene, like my city in Fort Lauderdale in South Florida, which used to boom with all these great artists, it's changed so much over time. But if you're in a city like I am, or if you're in an area or a county that has music venues, go to the shows. Like, the worst thing I think I could ever hear from an artist is, well, I don't want to support my local scene. Well, guess what? They're not going to support you back.
Right.
So if you're not going to shows, if you're not becoming friends with other artists in the area, like, it's not a competition. I know there are certain things of, oh, well, such and such artist got placed on an opening slot and we didn't. Who cares? Maybe they were better than you. I think it's so black and white. Go out.
And just because one person gets something doesn't mean that you might not get something else down the road. Maybe you're just not the right choice for it. If you're a country artist and, Toby Keith comes to town, of course they're going to pick you, the country artist over, say, your death metal band.
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying before, it could just be by chance. It could be being at the right place at the right time, getting that opportunity first. And it has nothing to do with anybody other than by chance. And that's how this industry has to work. And it's all by chance. It's all by who you know, who you run into, and the relationships that you have. But it is so important for an artist to make sure that if you are trying to enter the business, that you play a part of the business. And if you're going to do it, support other people, support other shows. I say this to my students all the time, and even my clients. Your social media should be like an 80-20. It should be, partial promotion, but it should also be partially showcasing your personality. And part of your personality could mean showcasing and lending a hand to other artists. People want to feel like if they're going to put money into something or their time and energy, that in return, they're getting something exciting to them. And that can mean an emotional excitement. That could be going and physically seeing the artist. But if an artist is promoting somebody else and genuinely cares about that artist and wants to see them succeed, I would give my money to that person and be like, you are awesome for, helping people. I think that's an important quality in a person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're entering the business and you don't know how to book shows, start going to some of the shows, meet the promoters, talk to the bands, put together weekend runs. I mean, there's so many opportunities to just do it yourself before you get into the craziness of the business and try to figure out and navigate through, all these avenues that are so complicated. You really can do it yourself. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. But if you mentally keep your attitude in it's not necessarily a negative thing, because I think it's got a lot of positives to it. But if your main one end goal is to get signed to a label, then you're missing out on all these other things. Like, make smaller goals, make smaller things that you can tackle and over time, instead of feeling like, you're threatened by your own career because you're not getting where you want fast enough. It's just going to destroy you.
And I've really taken that advice to heart, especially more so, oddly enough, in this podcast than I was when I was doing the music stuff, because now I'll go to shows, local shows, all the time. Whereas before, like when we were playing out and stuff, it's like, man, going to another show on a day off, like that's quite a task. But now I go to local shows all the time, and I wear my own podcast T-shirt. You know how I am with my T-shirt collection. So I love it. Wear my own podcast T-shirt, and then do just like I did back in 2004 when we first started playing music. And I just print out flyers, and don't go with the business cards or anything. I just print out flyers, all punk rock like it used to be, and pass them out and say hello to every single person, and let them know, hey, I have a podcast, and if you're in a band, I'd love you guys to be on it. And a lot of my guests are people that I have networked with through going to these shows, or other podcasters. I've appeared on other podcasts simply because I've networked with these people through going to the same local shows. So it's kind of important for everybody to do that and put the face time in and put the legwork in, because success is when preparation meets opportunity. You guys know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy because I know we were talking about this before we started everything, but I mean, we just hit 6 years with Catalyst, and, a lot of what we've done over the years has been a lot of preparation. I mean, there's so much that we calculate before we do anything. And that is simple, social media calendar to reworking a website, to adding a new team member, to, basically anything that is a part of our brand. So as much as we push it on an artist to have their own brand, we are doing the same exact thing. We do weekly conference calls, talk about, okay, how can we help these artists out differently? Or is there another tool that we can go after? And, there's so many ups and downs, and there's so many changes in the business. But, I mean, if you're not so meticulous with how you're doing things, you could miss out on something super important that can help you down the road. And I just think it's something where you just have to know your brand and know why you're doing what you're doing, and never get rid of that passion. So like you going back to shows and meeting all these people and passing out flyers, I mean, that's such a DIY approach that, even if you have hundreds of followers over the first year, and then eventually it leads to thousands of followers, that organic growth is going to be not only more meaningful to you, but you're going to have more dedicated followers along the way. And you never want to skip over that point, because the people that were at the very beginning could end up being the biggest helpers for you for your career.
Right. And just to give everybody out there listening a nickel's worth of free advice, this is something that we used to do all the time, and baby, yeah. And you can ask Jen, okay? She won't lie to you. But the FaceTime, the legwork is the most important. And the reason why it's the most important, and why it can get you a lot further than if you were to just wait and try to garner these people on social media, is simply no one else out there is really doing it. Not a lot of people go out there, promote their band face to face, and it's a treat for people because, oh, hey, I'm in this band and this is what we do, and I'm the singer or the drummer or whatever, and you shake hands with them and you give them a hug and you take a picture together. And that means a lot more to them than just if I were to get on Facebook and say, hey, like this link. So for those of you out there listening,
absolutely.
Do it the old-fashioned way because no one else, hardly no one else is out there doing it. I'll be out there doing it, but you guys can come join me.
And even add to that, get to know your team members. I can't even tell you how many times in the past we'll get hired for something, we'll have conversations about the campaign, we'll get to know the artist, and then they go. And it's like, I understand that there are certain things, an artist's career comes and goes, there's different waves. But the ones, you guys, Aha Baby Yeah was one of the first clients that, we signed with Catalyst. And I know we've obviously met many times over the years, but just knowing that you and I have a great relationship and the rest of the guys, we have a great relationship, but knowing that through the years, we've maintained a friendship and maintained the support system, no matter what, whether, say I didn't have Catalyst anymore, I'm sure we would still be friends.
Right.
Some artists, I feel like they go through the industry and it's like, they're like a bulldozer. They're like, well, I'm just going to keep, knocking shit down until I get to the point where I can stop in front of whatever it is and feel like that's my gateway to success. And it's like, that's not always the case. Some of these artists that jump ship so quickly or forget to thank their publicist or their manager or their booking agent or their label, I don't know if they have the right intentions to get into the business and to understand that it's not just necessarily about the success, it's about building the right team and building the right confidence around people. Because in the end of the day, especially being a publicist, and I know a manager is very similar, it's a 24-hour-a-day job.
Right.
If an artist needs me or if I know that I've gone through my typical work day and I still have stuff to do, I'm not going to bed until I finish it. And I feel like artists forget sometimes that at the end of the day, we still also have lives, and it would be so nice to get to know them. It would be nice to have that conversation of, I don't want to talk business. Let's talk about anything else. Let's get to know each other.
Right.
I think when you get into that personal level and you can have honest relationship and conversations, it just makes the whole thing just a little bit smoother. And, sometimes maybe we are not able to get the right press for an artist, and that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that our relationship with press is tarnished or we don't have that relationship. It could just simply mean that there's a disconnect between the music or, the timing or whatever it is. But if you have a nice and honest and comfortable relationship with your team members, you can actually turn around and say, listen, I really appreciate you as a person. I just need to understand why this is happening and have that honest conversation. Right. A lot of times artists will just be like, they don't know what they're doing, they're terrible, and then they tarnish relationships and reputation because they don't care. They're bulldozing through the industry. So I think that's a really good piece of advice for people that are just joining into the industry on the industry side or the artist side. We're all working hard. The music industry is not a 9-to-5. It never will be, and it never has been. So we need to respect each other. And if we're not respecting each other, then we shouldn't be in the industry. Right. I know that it's a cutthroat business, and everything is cutthroat. You could be in accounting, you could be in healthcare, and if you slip up and do something wrong, your job is at stake. And I get that. But in the music business where we're working with creative content, we should just all be working together. There's no reason why managers can't help other managers and publicists can't work with other publicists. And we've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of great support throughout the years, but also throughout the years, we've had some interesting, I would call them more speed bumps where it's like the industry has to work together. There's no way around it. And I feel like if we just continue to be on this destructive path, it just, I don't know if it's going to make the industry grow. I really think that collectively we all have to come together and support each other. And I mean, there could be a separate part of the industry where people hate on each other and they're fake to each other, but there can also be a really beautiful side of the industry where we're collaborating and working together and seeing a positive change in this crazy industry that never stops. So,
right. And I always just,
that's my 2 cents.
Everybody out there, if I can give you like a little bit of personal advice on that case as well, the people that you meet on your way up are the same people that you're going to meet on your way down. So you want to make sure that you take care of those people that are helping you out, because you never know. Like maybe they're going to be able to reach a hand out to you when you need it the most. Here I am with a podcast, and 6 years later, I'm talking to Jen. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. It's important to keep your connections because, like I said, it's just, for one, it's a matter of respect, but it's like one of those things where, the same people you meet on the way up are the same people you're going to meet, when you're doing a podcast like me.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, I mean, I'm so happy for you. It's so great. I love seeing, I know not every artist is going to maintain their, career in the business, but it's just nice to see. I mean, I've even had clients that have just totally gone in a different career path, but it's still nice to know what people are doing and what they're up to. And especially, as we're getting older and people are getting married and having kids, and, it's nice to have that, support system, and especially traveling a lot as an artist or, even in the industry, to go to cities and reconnect with people. And it's really nice. This industry has a lot of great positive things to it. And, I think you're absolutely right. You got to maintain those relationships and be nice to people and just be happy. Sure. I think that's like the most important thing in life.
And oddly enough, we got a great like reputation, amongst other artists, of just being like, hey, you guys are like some kids from Indiana and Kentucky, and you guys are really cool and chill, and we always were always nice and respectful to other people, and guys out there listening, that's basically how my podcast thrives, is just simply the contacts that I have made throughout these years are the people that are on this show, and the people that are going to continue to be on this show, and then they're going to have a positive experience, and then they're going to refer people, and that's kind of how things grow. It takes a village, you know what I'm saying? So make sure that you Absolutely. Are good to the people that are good to you. And my whole thing with this podcast is, to me, it's just like the music business. I work it like the music business, the way it used to be. And it's just kind of the Wild West. Like, the reason why I didn't jump into another band right now is just, it's catching fire as far as its popularity goes. Yes, there are a lot of podcasts out there, but it's one of those things where if you have a good podcast, you can still stand out because of your quality. You know what I'm saying? It's not like everything is, you're not getting thousands and thousands and thousands of super polished podcasts out there. And still, there are people that I talk to every day. They're like, what's a podcast, or how do I listen to it? So it's still kind of a new thing, a new medium kind of. So there's a lot of, I don't know, there's just a lot more kind of leeway in what I'm doing, but I just use it exactly like I did the music business, and promote the same way, and garner my fans one at a time. The exact same way that I used to. But that's what I like about it. And also, too, it's kind of goes back to, there's a guy named Zig Ziglar that said, you can get whatever you want. You just have to help enough people get what they want. And I think that's a great dynamic in relationship.
I like that.
For the podcast, because I'm helping, even though I get so much pleasure and joy out of it, they don't, a lot of people don't know, like these up and coming bands, like they're helping me out tremendously by being on the show. And then the fact that they are like, hey, Sean is showcasing us on the show, that's helping us out tremendously. So we're just have like that's the great thing about like doing podcasts and stuff like this now, is it's essentially a give and take relationship. You're helping each other out, and so there you go.
Yeah, I love it. That's so nice.
Hey,
I love that.
I do what I can. So as we're wrapping up here, Jen, just because we have talked for a little bit, and a couple things here. 6 years as CEO, or 6 years with Catalyst. And let me ask you this. What have been, let me ask you just actually in general, before I ask this question, why don't you give the listeners out there a list of some of the bands, some of the notable names that you work with or have worked with in the past?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'll have the BF. The greatest. We've also worked with Cartel, which that campaign was just so awesome. I loved that band. They were just part of the reason why I got into the industry. So being able to work with them, especially for their 10-year anniversary of Chroma, was probably one of the highlights. And not to mention, just getting to know the guys and getting to know them as people and still being friends with them. That was a very cool experience. Outside of Cartel, we also worked with Our Last Night, which was such a great campaign because they were so unconventional with how they went about things. And they're probably one of the most unique bands I've ever worked with. We also worked Boys Like Girls last summer for their 10-year anniversary. The Spill Canvas, which, I love that band so much. That was really great to work with. And one of my favorites right now, I'm working with John Schneider, who is an actor. He was Bo Duke in the original Dukes of Hazzard, and also played the father on Smallville, and right now he's in Tyler Perry's TV show, which is on Oprah's channel. He's basically doing everything under the sun. He is just a phenomenal person, a really good person to work with, and it's just very exciting to see how many projects he's able to pretty much do at one time. It's pretty incredible. Outside of that, we've also been working with Outer Loop Records for a long time, and they've got great heavy hitters like Lorna Shore and Youth in Revolt. So yeah, I'm honestly, I'm very fortunate. I mean, those are names that people have heard of, throughout the years and stuff. But all of our artists, they have something very special and very unique about them. And the best thing I can say is go to our Facebook, go to our website, get to know some of these emerging artists because a lot of them have a really good career ahead of them. So I'm very fortunate and very excited for at least the rest of this year, see what's to come in 2018.
Well, fantastic. And if you guys ever need to get some publicity for Catalyst for some of your artists, just feel free to give me a call. I'll be more than happy to have some of you guys, some of your roster there on the old podcast if you wanted to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not here to solicit things from you, but that was one of my questions was here, just as we wrap up. So for our listeners, when would you say is the best time for someone to get a publicist? And what is the best way to go about doing that? An email, a Facebook message?
Yeah, definitely an email. We check our Facebook messages. I try really carefully to only friend people on my personal page that I have some sort of relationship with. So if you try to hit me up on Facebook, it's not happening, and I'll direct you to our info email. But go to our website. Our website, we put a section together under the About section that basically has all those questions and answers of, okay, so when is the right time to contact? And the right time really is as you're going through production. So if you're finishing an album, it still will take us weeks and weeks and weeks to get everything set up. So whether you have an idea of when your production is going to be completed, when you know the album is finished, that's really the time when you have to say, okay, I know that September 1st I finished my album. It's going to take at least 8 weeks minimum to get something out to the public. So at that point, you have to be okay with waiting to have the right team. So my suggestion always is to plan it out very far in advance. So if you know that you need team members, you got to start shopping for them early. And when you know that you've completed a project, you have to allow yourself enough time to get through that process. And, sometimes it does take a little bit, especially if you need to hire a lawyer to look over contracts. And, it's not just an overnight finish the album, start promotion the next day. It has to line up perfectly with, our roster availability. And as of, really this year and last year, we start booking at least 2 months out. So it does take a little while for, us to get an artist on the roster. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to say no because the timing is just not right or it's just not available. So it is really important to understand the timeline, understanding when to reach out to a publicist when the time is right. That's going to be the most important thing. But the best thing you can do is go to catalystgrouppr.com. That will give you everything that you need on there. Our general email, which just goes directly to me, is on there, and you can shoot me an email. And when you go through your email, you absolutely, this is so important, you want to make sure that you give me everything. So links to the band, songs, don't attach anything. Give us something where we can stream it either through Dropbox or SoundCloud. I want to know what you've done and what you're looking for, what the album is about, something unique about what you're doing. Sometimes we get these artists that say, I have an album and we need PR. And to go back and forth on email for 10, 12 emails before even having enough information to jump on a call can be very frustrating.
Right.
Because at that point, no matter how many times I email back, there could be 2 to 3 days of delay, or say I'm out of town, or say there's like a weekend. Now you're pushing it into like a week to 3 weeks or 4 weeks when you could have just given us everything that we needed up front, and then we could have started when the availability was there. So definitely make sure that you're giving a publicist or a manager or a label or whoever you're going after all of the information possible, and do it in a way where I know that you've done research. So if you're putting things together properly, there are so many tools out there that can tell you how to reach out to somebody in the industry, what needs to be included, what you should already have put together. I want to see that, because I get most excited when artists are giving me things that I need throughout the campaign and they're done. I know that my setup job is going to be a little bit easier.
Right. It's not just, hey, need PR. Bye.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic.
I mean, sometimes that is how it is, but yeah, I try to educate as much as I can through the process, but there's only so much that you can do. And actually, one other quick thing of advice. So when you do reach out to a publicist and say you go through the whole conversation, say you reach out to multiple PR firms, and at the end of it, you're like, I found the one that I want. Make sure to go back to the other ones and let them know as politely as possible that you're not moving forward. There's no worse thing than having to follow up 20 times without any response. Make sure you give that courtesy to the rest of the teams that you are reaching out to, because, sometimes, especially like if we're waiting to see if somebody's going to get back to us, you want to make sure that you're at least letting them know, hey, you know what, I found another solution. This is the direction we're going. Let's keep our lines of communication open, because like you said, you never know who you're going to run into. But those people that just fall short and, stop communicating, I probably won't work with them, because they didn't have that respect to begin with. Right. So definitely make sure that you communicate things as best as possible.
You guys heard it. It's all about the RESPECT, guys. So if you want Jen to work for you, you better respect her rules. But yeah, Jen, I appreciate you so much. I wanted to tell you this story way back at the beginning, and I feel like it's all making sense while I'm just kind of ranting and I keep forgetting. My train of thought just keeps buzzing right out of the station, and that's because it's a little early for me as far as podcasting goes. So I had just woken up and I was like, I got to get some coffee here, and so I went to Dunkin' Donuts, which if anybody knows me, that's always a chore. I literally live next to the world's worst Dunkin' Donuts. And I went there to get coffee. And I just wanted you to know that I won a complimentary bagel with cream cheese spread off of my peeling game off of my cup of coffee. So everything's
That's
looking
amazing.
up, guys. You know what I'm saying? I might not have liked Dunkin', but now I got a free bagel.
I did make you wake up early.
Yeah.
I made you wake up too early.
So early.
Well, you wanted to do this at like 10 p.m. and I'm usually in bed by 8:30.
I'm still on my rock star schedule. You know what I'm saying? So 10 a.m.
I know.
Phew.
I know. Well, once my dog falls asleep, then I'm like, all right, well, I guess I should too. So makes sense.
But yeah. And then also too, I was going to say, I hate in movies, like, because they gave me obviously a styrofoam cup with like that little, like that lid where you peel back that thing. Have you ever noticed in TV shows or movies that people just drink coffee out of these things with reckless abandon? So you know that they're empty, because every time I try to drink out of this thing, it's like I'll take a sip, burn my mouth, freak out for like a little bit, let it sit, and then it tricks me again. It's always hot.
Yep. I always hate when I do that, or especially when I get hot tea, and then I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to drink it. And then I leave it, and then I forget about it, and then it's cold.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing. So
I'm too impatient. Guys, I put ice cubes in my coffee. If anybody wants to know why, it's because I want to drink it immediately. I don't want to drink it later. That's why I bought it now.
Well, I mean, you need hot coffee, especially when it gets cold. For us in Florida, it's like you can't have enough iced coffee. You need something cold, and that's the only way you can drink your coffee.
You heard it, guys. That's how Floridians do it. If you want people to mistake you for a Floridian, you better be drinking that iced coffee from Starbucks. Of course, we don't have a Starbucks around here unless I want to go to Kentucky. And also, I found out here today, as we're just wrapping up, I'm just going to really wrap it up here, but continue to talk to you because it's been a while, that you were a Hoosier briefly, that you went to Bloomington. Yeah. So of all the years that I've known you, now I know that you were one of us
you
at one time.
You didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I went to Indiana University. I'm a Hoosier all the way.
Yeah.
And I love Bloomington, Indiana so much. And actually, funny enough, I was invited to speak at Indiana last year. And I kid you not, music department flew me out for this conference. And I was like a kid in a candy store because I hadn't been in. I graduated in 2009. It had probably been about 6 years or so, 5 or 6 years. Once you graduate, then you don't really know anybody. There's no point to necessarily go back. And who wants to trek all the way to Indiana in the middle of the winter? So, but they flew me out. It was December. And funny enough, my boyfriend was driving me to the airport, and I left my jacket at home. So I made him go run home. Thankfully, we're only like 5 minutes from home, but I was like, I need a winter coat because it's December 1st, and I'm going to freeze my ass off in Indiana. And I was very fortunate he made it right in time. But I had the best time. I love Indiana so much. And every time my boyfriend's in Indianapolis on tour, I'm like, can you just drive 45 minutes south and just go to Bloomington and see what it's like? And I get very upset when I hear people are like, in or around Bloomington. Well, makes me very sad.
I'm definitely around Bloomington. So next time you're ever in the area visiting your old stomping grounds, hit up your boy Sean, and we'll make a day of it. And I'll wear a cool T-shirt, and I'll bring one for you too.
What city are you in? What town are you in?
I'm in Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is just north of Louisville, Kentucky. So all of our, as you know, all of our PR stuff always said Louisville. Guys, I'm going to let you know that was a little fib because we're actually from 30 seconds north in Indiana, separated only by the Ohio River. Locals, you'll know this. It's all new. It's not new to you, but yeah. So I'm about 2 hours away from Bloomington. I'm 2 hours directly south of Indianapolis. So
I love it. I want to go back so bad. Maybe next year, maybe for Little Five, I'll go back.
There you go. Well, I'll be more than happy to entertain you guys whenever you're here, and we'll go out and we'll make a day of it. So, but Jen, let me ask you one more time. Repeat out there for all the listeners. Where can people find Catalyst Publicity Group on the internet? CatalystGroupPR.com, or you can just type in the Catalyst Publicity Group in Google, and we're the first one that pops up. There you go, guys. So if you're interested and you need that publicity, you're going to hit up Jen, and she's going to get you taken care of. And guys, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe to Sean vs. Wild on the iTunes and on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter and anywhere else that you like to follow me around. I'll be there. And Jen, it's been a real pleasure. I want you to stay safe out there. Let me know how Irma turns out. And guys, well, I'll tell you what, it's so early. I'm about ready to go start my day. So the coffee has kicked in 100%. So I'm feeling good, feeling energized.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that we got to do this.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, this has been the Sean vs. Wild podcast.